My freshman year at a big state university started off like most, a mix of excitement, nerves, and a rush to fit in. I was lucky enough to be selected for an honors program, which came with a perk: living in a dorm with other students from the same program. It felt like the perfect way to meet people, make friends, and maybe even start a relationship. That's how I met Megan. She lived one floor above me, and things between us moved quickly. It seemed convenient and exciting to date someone so close. Megan was confident and always the center of attention, traits that I initially found charming. But others in our dorm weren't as impressed. They thought she was self-absorbed, always talking about herself, and a little too proud of being fairly aggressive. Looking back, I should have paid attention to those warnings. But at the time, I was just happy to have someone I clicked with. Everything seemed fine, until Thanksgiving break. That's when I found out Megan had stolen over $100 from my checking account to fund a series of Grubhub orders. From there, the situation spiraled into something I could have never imagined. The whole thing started with a call from my mom. She noticed some strange charges on my bank account, 6 Grubhub orders totaling $104.29. At the time, my debit card was my only access to money, so it was easy to see something wasn't right. I didn't remember making any of those purchases, and I rarely spent money during the semester since I had an unlimited dining plan. My first thought was to ask Megan. We were dating, I trusted her, and it just seemed like the logical place to start. She denied everything immediately, and even suggested I cancel my debit card. After a long, frustrating call with my bank, I did just that. Still, I couldn't let it go. I reached out to Grubhub's customer service through Twitter and asked for receipts for the transactions. They sent me 2, the first and most recent orders. The personal details were redacted, but their sloppy use of the Snapchat draw tool left Megan's name clearly visible. And to make matters worse, the most recent order had been placed just 2 hours earlier. She was probably still eating the food she stole from me when I was on the phone with the bank. I texted her again. I have the receipts from Grubhub. Are you sure you didn't make those orders? Her response? F you for suspecting me. It was as aggressive as she claimed to be, and it was all the confirmation I needed. I planned to gather even more proof. I wanted to get security camera footage of her picking up the latest order. But before I could act, she showed up at my door, crying and confessing to everything. She admitted she had used my money to order food and even revealed she was a serial shoplifter. Exhausted, I sent her away and figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next evening, Megan burst into my room without warning, demanding, "Give me my stuff." Where's my stuff? When I asked what she was talking about, she refused to explain, tearing through my room like a hurricane. Then, as suddenly as she arrived, she stormed out. A minute later, she was back, banging on my door, screaming, "Open the door." The whole building could hear her, and I could hear the heavy wood of my dorm room door cracking as she threw herself against it, trying to break it down. I texted my RA, who was in another building, and he sent a few colleagues to handle the situation. They escorted Megan downstairs, where she finally revealed that the stuff she was looking for was a t-shirt and keychain she'd given me as birthday gifts. I let her have them, hoping it would be over. But it wasn't over. The Resident Life staff filed paperwork for a no-contact order between us, and the campus police got involved, suggesting I file a small claims case for the stolen money. The Title IX office stepped in, too, filing misconduct charges against Megan for theft, threatening behavior, and causing a university intervention. By now, everyone in our dorm knew what was going on. Megan had been spreading her own version of events, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. When I agreed to serve as a witness at her disciplinary hearing, I was just hoping for a resolution. Then, they scheduled the hearing for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day finally arrived, and I walked into the disciplinary hearing feeling both anxious and determined. The board was made up of grad students, and I was prepared to lay out the facts. What I wasn't prepared for was Megan's entourage. She showed up with her parents, who were ready to defend her as character witnesses, and even hired a lawyer to represent her. Yes, a lawyer. The board members were unfazed, reminding everyone that this wasn't a courtroom and a lawyer wasn't necessary. Still, Her parents clearly believed Megan's story, and they were pulling out all the stops to protect their daughter. Fortunately, I wasn't alone either. The board provided me with a student advocate, Jimmy, a junior economics major who had read through all my evidence. He was confident the Grubhub receipts would back up my story, but when I told him about the video I'd kept secret, his eyes lit up. "You have a video of her trying to break down your door?" he asked, barely able to contain his excitement. I nodded. "It's all there. Her screaming, kicking, everything." "That's it," he said. "This is going to change everything." The hearing began, and Megan's lawyer presented her version of the story. According to her, I'd given her permission to use my debit card for food, and then turned around to frame her as a thief. She claimed she politely asked for her belongings back, but that I refused, hiding them in my room to spite her. To Megan's parents, this was gospel truth, and they glared at me like I was the worst person alive. Then it was my turn. Jimmy presented the Grubhub receipts, showing Megan's name clearly listed as the account holder. Megan's lawyer tried to dismiss them as circumstantial evidence, but then Jimmy pulled out the big guns. "Let's take a look at this," he said, plugging my phone into the boardroom's big screen. The video played, showing Megan outside my door, screaming profanities and violently throwing herself at the door, trying to break it down. Her voice was unmistakable, and the evidence was irrefutable. The room erupted. Megan's parents were furious, yelling, "Why didn't you tell us about this?" Her lawyer was livid, shouting objections that the board quickly shut down. "This is not a court of law," one board member said firmly. "Please sit down." Meanwhile, Jimmy could barely keep a straight face as Megan's defense unraveled. For the first time, I saw Megan's confidence crumble. She looked panicked, her usual bravado replaced by stunned silence. Her parents' faith in her innocence shattered in real time, and even her lawyers seemed to realize there was no saving this case. By the end of the hearing, the board found Megan responsible for all 3 charges: theft, threatening behavior, and inciting an intervention. The consequences? She was ordered to pay restitution for most of the stolen money, move to a different dorm building, and face a formal reprimand on her university record. But the punishment didn't stop there. Megan had already alienated everyone in our building with her lies and behavior. By the time she moved, she had failed all her courses again, and her parents, having paid for her tuition, her lawyer, and the restitution, finally pulled her out of school altogether. By the end of that semester, Megan was gone. Her parents had pulled her out of school, cutting their losses after the tuition, and used dining plan, lawyer fees, and restitution they'd shelled out on her behalf. Her reputation was in shambles, and no one from our dorm wanted anything to do with her. The no-contact order meant I never saw her again, but I heard bits and pieces through mutual acquaintances. Megan had returned to school part-time the following year, trying to salvage what was left of her academic career. She stayed far away from our dorm and anyone who knew the real story. As for me, I came out of the ordeal stronger. My stolen money was mostly repaid, and I avoided legal trouble despite Megan's best attempts to drag me down. I also learned some valuable lessons about red flags and the importance of listening to others when they warn you about someone's character. The video of Megan's breakdown became the defining piece of evidence that turned everything around. Without it, her version of events might have held more weight, and I might have been left with more questions than closure. The aftermath wasn't all bad. I stayed Facebook friends with the guy Megan had tried to seduce, and we still joke about how we dodged a bullet. Jimmy, my student advocate, and I even connected on LinkedIn, where he continues to crush his law school ambitions. Looking back, I don't regret standing up for myself. Megan's actions were dishonest, manipulative, and outright dangerous, and while I didn't set out for revenge, the outcome felt like justice. Now I'm in my senior year, happy and thriving. Most importantly, I've learned to steer clear of anyone who brags about being fairly aggressive. If you've ever had to deal with someone like Megan or been in a situation where you had to fight for the truth, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you handle it? What lessons did you learn? Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this one. Let's keep the conversation going, and I'll see you in the next one.